I welcome you all to the knowledge series on digital marketing, how to make digital marketing work for customer acquisition and retention. 5 new and easy ways to transform your online and mobility marketing results. This digital knowledge series is designed for retailers aiming to increase key metrics through smart use of customer-centric digital and mobile marketing initiatives. This inspiring and fast-paced session will help you understand how you can use digital marketing to acquire more customers, retain them, and subsequently earn a larger share of wallet. You will get thought-provoking and fresh thoughts on omni-channel marketing, mobility, and how to keep your customers happy and fiercely loyal. We have an international expert over here. He is Mr. Michael Leander, CEO of the Michael Leander company from Copenhagen, Denmark. He is a multi-award winning speaker, a judge from Digital Direct and Loyalty Marketing Awards, a consultant for agencies and brands, a board member, and has delivered 40 keynotes in different countries. Michael Leander is an award-winning marketing thought leader, speaker, and change maker. Hailing from Denmark, he has helped leading global brands embrace, change, and implement marketing programs that delivered impressive results. Michael is a channel agnostic, tell it as it is, return on marketing investment, focused individual with a passion for customer centricity. An internet marketing pioneer since 1995, he still maintains that the trick is in the channel mix. A former top executive in public and private corporations, he now spends much of his time sharing his knowledge and ideas with audiences around the world. So far in more than 40 countries on 6 continents. He has opened huge conferences, taught at prestigious business schools, and trained global brands such as Nestle, Unilever, Samsung, IBM, Americana Group, and many more. The takeaways from this knowledge series: the global brands he has trained are Samsung, IBM, Nestle, Unilever, and Americana. I request Mr. Leander to address us. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Wow. Holy Moses. No, here's the thing. Let me just take off some of my clothes. The rest will follow later. Just got to get into the mood first, but here's the thing. In the briefing, which by the way was very thorough, and this organization is very professional, I was told to expect that you'd all be very smart. And I'm sure you are, because otherwise you wouldn't be here. But here's why I was shocked just before, is I wasn't told that you're so good looking, all of you. That's like amazing. So in a long time ago, when I was a young advertising man, just started out, I had a client, a retail client. And back then, retail was all about catalogs, brochures that you would distribute to households and then hope in return house mothers and sometimes husbands would then come to the shop and buy whatever they would buy. And I remember, as in the advertising environment, my colleagues were always very busy about the creativity. Because these catalogs, they look the same, more or less, only with a little bit different products. But you know what I'm talking about? The format was almost always the same. And in advertising, you have these wonderful creative people who want to change things all the time. Isn't that right? For no apparent reason other than it just makes their job more fun. And then they try to rationalize that by saying that if we change it up, we're going to sell more, which we could never prove, right? And I, as a young person, I couldn't say no because they were all like 20 years older than I, because I was extremely young, like 19 or 20 years old. So I always presented these ideas to my clients. Does anyone remember the time when airbrush came into the picture as a way of creating graphics? Very special technique. You remember, yeah? You have to be more than, let's say 30, maybe 35 to remember that time. And I presented that, and he was really impressed about what we had done. But then he told me something. He said, if I'm... It's not audible? Sorry about the technical details. Is it audible now? Okay. Please shout if you can't hear me, and then I'll try to shout louder without the mic. Where did I come to? Yeah, so he said that it's very nice and so on, but if I'm going to invest in that, there has to be other reasons than just to do something new. It has to make sense. If not financially, immediately, then at least I have to be able to tell my shareholders that eventually it's going to give us a return. Maybe not as a direct result of sales, but perhaps something to do with their image, something to do with recognition, something that customers would refer back to. Like, you know, the kind of companies that have an elephant in their logo and people would say, the people with the elephant in the logo. You know, that kind of thing. Now, this man, he learned me a lot because I came from that advertising background and pretty much doing everything that everybody else was doing, but he kept me real all the time. And that has shaped my career as a marketer, as a CMO, as a CEO of private and public companies, to keep it real. And I could do two things here today. One is what I'm about to do over the next 3 hours or so. The other would be to just show you all the smart stuff, give you a lot of case studies, and say if you emulate this somehow, you're going to be successful, right? And that's what I sometimes do in some countries, but not in India. Because I know the talent mass here is enormous. And I know the execution power is there. So what I'm going to do instead is I'm going to give you some content that hopefully will inspire you to think for yourself. To draw parallels from what I'm about to tell you to your own situation. Because I know you're smart enough. You don't need me or other consultant type, speaker type, trainer type people to figure it out. But maybe you just need to put things into perspective. So let me get started with the whole, I have about 300 slides. That's a little, I think around 2 per minute. Is that okay? Because the program said fast-paced. And since, as you can see, I'm no longer in a great shape, so I let the slides do the talking, or the running, if you will. So keep this in mind when you go into your businesses, when you're interacting with agencies and your colleagues, that we all start in the same place, in any type of marketing communication activity. We are all the same when it comes to that. We all start with a blank canvas. Unfortunately, in this day and age, a lot of people think that they have to populate that blank canvas with something everybody else seems to be doing at the time. Let me mention social media as such a phenomenon. I see some of you are nodding because you know it's true. Social media came up there to the point where you couldn't not be in social media because it'll make you look stupid. Isn't that right? Very few major brands around the world had the stamina to say no because Facebook and the like is not going to give us a return at this point in time. Sloppy Joe's, I think it's called, a huge retailer in the US. Maybe it's not Sloppy Joe's, it's something Joe's. They're still not in social media, but they're extremely profitable. How come? Because they are not in social media. They're not wasting their time if they don't see a return immediately or in the near future. Now, I think they will come onto social media, and I'll give you the reason for that a little bit later on. But keep this in mind, the decisions you make about what you're going to do with that canvas really is what stands between where you are now and your success. A lot of Indian retailers and other businesses in India are very good in many ways in terms of filling this canvas. But then most of them are very poor in complete execution. It becomes very technical in your country, and you're very good at that. But keep in mind, retail, there's a last step, right? That's the individual at point of sale. I'll get back to that as well. So when you think about this canvas, and you think about that great idea, and you think about that execution, think about the last step as well. And make sure that you think, if you're a marketer, or if you're a business person, that your job is actually to fulfill the whole value chain. Not just the communication bit, and then leave the rest to somebody else. Because what really matters in this day and age, as I will cover through these slides, is really the experience that people get in the last step. Everything else was just promises until that point. Are you following me? And digital is the same. If you can't deliver a great experience, if people can't fulfill what they desire to fulfill, they're not going to be happy, right? Let me give you some examples from my own country. You may know these brands. They're all born in Denmark. All of them were very, very good at, oops, sorry, there was some censorship going on. All of them were born by an idea, and then they were able to, over the years, complete this canvas. I want to just talk a little bit about each of them. Pandora is hugely successful because there's a huge degree of consumer involvement at the first purchase, but in particular at subsequent purchases, right? Because you collect this stuff. Their digital presence is okay, but not great. Their loyalty mechanisms, although they would say differently, are really non-existent. So they have an upside if they were to evaluate that canvas in terms of their loyalty mechanisms. You know Jack and Jones, Vero Moda? Present in India, I think, for some years, one of the most successful, financially successful businesses in Denmark. What they've been really, really good at is providing cheap clothing to a lot of people. That's how they started. Now, I would not be seen wearing that brand myself. Not because there's anything wrong with it today, but when they started out, it was a very cheap brand for a different type of people than myself, because I think I'm very fashionable and stuff. Don't you? No. Lego, you know, possibly one of the most successful toy companies in the world, definitely financially. But in terms of affinity and affection, I think they are one of the most successful brands in the world, right? They have the same, are you noticing a trend here? They have the same element as Pandora, which is the collection part and the experience part. But the experience part is more pronounced. And that's one of the reasons why Lego is so incredibly successful. You buy the product for yourself or somebody else, and whichever it is, whoever gets to use it gets to experience it, but not as a solo artist, right? It's a group effort very often, in particular with children, but also with adults. They play with it, they create things with it, and so on. Their digital presence is magnificent, and I would encourage you to check out Lego's website and see what you can learn from them in terms of the experience they give, in terms of the extension of the products that you'll find on their websites. Do you know Tiger? That's a pretty lame business model, but very successful. They don't worry too much about the internet. Really, they don't. They are acquired by a capital fund a few years ago. All they care about is how much revenue per square meter. That's all they care about. They have no interest in establishing a relationship with their customers. And guess what? I think that's okay. If you have a business like that, with low margins, etc., but you have an experiential element, because people go there again and again because it's so cheap. Everybody can afford to go there once a week and pick up something for whatever it costs in India, let's say 100 rupees, 200 rupees a piece. And they're unique pieces to some extent, so it still makes you look good, right? But they're not worried about their digital presence because they don't need it. And if you're like that, you shouldn't be worrying about your digital presence either. It's not something you have to do to be a business. There's no law against you not having a website, not doing online marketing, and so on. And the last one over here is called Bolia. And this is a furniture retailer, now very successful. And I happen to own an agency when they started, and well, they've all been clients of mine, but this one in particular, I just want to mention one thing that I think we can all learn from, where we can leverage digital to get an audience and leverage the physical footprint to deliver an experience. Because Bolia's model was very unique when they launched in 2002 or 2001, I can't exactly remember. Because the way it worked is that the physical stores were essentially just showrooms. People would go in there and complete the order on a computer in the shop, unless they wanted to go home and complete the order. So it seemed a little bit weird to people, but once they got the concept, it was really smart. But they thought they needed to tie something else in. And what we came up with was a bunch of experiences. So we created a club, and not a discount club, I have a lot of experience here in India, and I've been to a lot of retailers. I don't want to mention any names because that wouldn't be fair, right? But a lot of times when they're pushing you, you know, are you a member of our club? Okay, I can't do the Indian accent today. And say, no, what's that about? It's a club, it's free. You get discounts. Okay, sign me up. And what happens? Well, if you leave your Indian phone number in India for a week and come back and open it, you're going to be bombarded with text messages, right? One after another, promising one discount after another. And you know everybody got that discount. There's nothing special from me. You see what I'm saying? With Bolia, what we did is we made sure there was something special. And we differentiated from the get-go so that we had normal customers and then we have heavy user customers. And heavy user customers were qualified for special events where we invited very famous Danish musicians to a shop where we could hold 40 people, 60 people, 80 people for a free concert. So similar to what Nestle is doing now, they have this, what's it called, coffee rock concerts. Isn't that in India? Well, in Pakistan they have it, Nestle something, Nestle concerts. Anyhow. But the Pakistanis told me that it came from India. Okay, good. It's good to joke. That's always great. So keep that in mind. If you are into the loyalty scheme, maybe there's a better way than to just push discounts. Maybe you should offer something more of value. Maybe you can use the digital channel to communicate that in a differentiated manner, which is not happening in India today. Communication in India is one size fits all. Would you agree? If you think of yourself as a consumer, I get the same as everybody else. We'll get back to that. So let's park that there. Marketing is great because we can use it for so many things. Did you know that the engagement ring, the concept of an engagement ring, is actually a marketing ploy created by De Vere to sell more diamonds? They also created the notion in the US market where it all started that a man wasn't a real man loving his fiancée if he didn't spend at least 3 salaries on his engagement ring. I would have gone for 5 if it was me, but they were keeping it real. They're South Africans, what do you know, right? So 3 salaries, then you're a man. That was a marketing ploy. We're still doing it, right? And of course, I just came from the US, and over there, it's probably like 100 times their salary or whatever, because everybody has to be bigger than the next person, even if they're not from Texas. So when we talk about this aspect of jewelry, gems, whether it's for engagement, marriage, whatever, this is my wife. Well, she wasn't my wife at that time. She was somebody I wanted to marry. Took some time to convince her. Luckily, I'm a marketer, so I had the tools. And I remember the tedious task of having to choose an engagement ring. I mean, one shop after another in 3 different countries. I lived in a different country than my own, and we lived another place together and so on. And I'm a man, right? I just wanted to find the perfect ring. I did not want to enjoy that experience of running from shop to shop, as some women are known to do, right? Like they can spend the whole Saturday just running from shop to shop to shop, and that experience in itself is like, oh, we had such a marvelous time. What did you buy? Nothing. But that's a waste of time, if you ask a man, right? So, but today, think about how long we've come, guys. If you wanted to divorce and remarry, find another ring, all of this can be done online. We all know that, right? And the Indian industry for gems and jewelry and so on is just now getting started, offering some pretty chic digital presence, right? Where you can compare. But it doesn't take away the last fear. Keep that in mind for digital. Follow me now. There's still an element of, does it really look that way? Is it real? Etc., etc., etc. All of those things necessitates that most of us, we need to get down to that shop. So we use the internet in this way as a way of pinpointing what are my 2 options. And then we might actually go to a physical store to see it. Now, I want you to write this down. It seems very basic, very simple. But if you know consumer behavior, and if you remember to react on the behavior that people really have, you might actually find some models that can work and take care of this element of friction, as we call it. It's a serious element of friction. but there are models that allows you to deal with it. Father's Day was invented in the same way. Did you know that? And we're still celebrating Father's Day. In India, you have a Sister's Day, I believe it is, where you exchange ribbons. I don't know if these ribbons are expensive, but you could use a Pandora, couldn't you? And give to, do you have a brother? So you could give your brother one of the, they have for men as well. No, I'm not, I'm just, the thing about Father's Day today is it's the same concept, right? What people do once they got the hang of digital, online, internet, is they search the web for gift ideas. So what does that tell you? If you are in any of these brackets, you need to have a presence, and that you need to make sure that your presence is found. Is that right? Here's a news flash for Indian retailers. Many Indian retailers are not found on the first page of Google when you search for their category. Neither nationally or locally. Why? Because the SEO nerds are taking those spots. Because big brands are not focusing in the same way on SEO, which is search engine optimization. But there are small entities who know that stuff, and they do all kinds of tricks that a big brand would never do, because it's not entirely, you know, we can't say it's illegal, but it's not ethical the way some of these guys are operating. So whatever category you're in, if you're a category where there's a lot of searching going on Google or other search engines, you want to be sure that you're found on the keywords that people actually use. And then you ask yourself, would I need to be able to be found in multiple languages? And I say, heck yeah. If you're nationwide and people are searching in what are the languages? Kannada, Mulalalayam, you know, all those languages. Then you might have to optimize for them. We'll get back to this, but that's a whole new challenge for you, right? Because that means you have to produce content. If you're only in Hindi and English today, you might have to produce content in multiple languages, and you're not necessarily going to get a lot more resources to do it. So that might be a challenge for marketers. The experiential part is really, really efficient if you do it right. And thanks to the internet and digital and mobility, you can really do it right. This is another example from Denmark. Some of you may have had a Tuborg beer in your life. Some of you might have had many. Nobody came forward. I don't know why. And in Denmark, Tuborg launched the J-Day many years ago. And it's now a tradition. It takes place every year. And a beer is launched at precisely a specific time. From this example, it was the 1st of November at 9:01 in the evening. It used to be Wednesdays, but they had to change it by law because too many kids were not coming to school on Thursdays. So there was a law passed that they cannot have it on any other day but Fridays, right? So it's always been very traditional. And I worked with them for some years when the internet really got hype in Denmark, and we created a lot of stuff online. I can give it all to you if you want it. You'll get my email address later. And as a result, merchandise sale went through the roof. Because we were able to connect that physical experiential experience with something online that was much more convenient. So to get that merchants, that would be ugly dresses like this. The uglier the better, is what we learned. So for people to buy that, when they had to go to certain stores to buy it, we didn't sell as much as the moment we had that connection in an online shop, right? It makes sense. And when we talk about experiential, many of you are doing these types of things. Some of you call them events. Think about not that in itself as a solo event, but think about how can I connect digital. So the way we're working with this today is that we're leveraging the experiential moment as a way of starting a conversation. The way we used to do that was a way of starting and ending a conversation. Are you following me? People interact with us at whichever place it takes place, and then when it's over, nothing else happens, right? And then we thought we did a really good job, but actually we didn't. Because a lot of people may have wanted to buy, in this case it's Dr. Dre, sold by Dixon's. A lot of people may have wanted to buy at that point in time, didn't have the money, had to go home and ask the wife, or the husband for that matter, or whatever it is. You're following me, right? So if we can connect somehow so we get an opportunity to get in touch with people after the fact, we would be much more efficient. Later on, I'll give you some information so that this will make even more sense. Let me just show you a video at this point if the sound is on.
your Santa. JCPenney would like to wish you a Merry Christmas.
Hey John, it's Jen. Merry Christmas. Hey John, it's Jen. Merry Christmas.
Smart, huh? Very smart, and I'm so lucky that I judge all of these different award shows, because then I get to see all of these campaigns. Not all of them are great like this one. The results behind this campaign was unbelievable, especially after Christmas sales. But you get the point, right? Because you're capturing data, you're using them in a value-adding way, and as a result, people are open. That's not what's happening in this country. Unfortunately, people are afraid of handing out their correct email address, their correct phone number, because they don't really get value the other way. And we have to change that. You have to change that collectively as an industry. Get data privacy legislation in place. The government has given up because it said all the brands have ruined it for themselves. But now Modi is in place, and if somebody was smart, they contacted his people, have your people contact his people, and say, let's talk about data privacy and get a permission legislation in place in India, because that would help all retail marketers, and all marketers for that matter. In particular, it's necessary for campaigns like this, because if you don't get the correct data, this campaign would fail. You follow me? So I have a little exercise. First of all, I want to say in the break, we're going to change the seatings a little bit so that people who are sitting over here and breaking their neck to see the what do you call it, this thing. Sorry, I don't really speak English. I'm just pretending. Yeah, so that you don't have to break your neck to see the slides. So we'll do a little activity now. And let me just explain it. Unfortunately, we have to use this bigger camera. Okay, and so let me explain what we're going to do. So I'm going to give the camera to you. Then you will take a picture of the gentleman sitting next to you, and then vice versa, and we'll keep on doing that. But before you take the picture of him, and you just do that while I'm speaking, you offer him a piece of candy. When you get the candy, you put it in the mouth immediately, and that's when you click the picture. Now, I know that about 10% of you will like this candy. That's suffice to say that, so you can guess. But very popular in Northern Europe. It's licorice, and it's not like you get diarrhea or anything like that. So, and also, if you want some of the follow-up material, there's an envelope. If you put your business card or just a piece of paper with your name and email address, then I'm going to follow up and not spam you, but follow up with the material that I promised. You all understand? Good. Okay. Remember to put it in the mouth before you. Excellent. Good. So you're probably very interested about who I am, how I started, how I grew, you know, size-wise, up to a certain age, and then. But let's skip all that. That's not what you came here for. I think I am qualified to be here because I've been in marketing for many years. I've had some successes, but I've also done a lot of mistakes. But thankfully, I've learned from most of those mistakes. I think that suffices for now. Otherwise, I'm on LinkedIn. My email address is michael@leander.me, but keep it to yourself, because that's my secret email address, and I'm serious. I created this just for you. I will always reply to any question. If I can be in less than 15 minutes. If it takes more than 15 minutes, it's $1 million. But then you can take an hour. That's usually funny. Yeah. What's wrong with you people? Okay, michael@leander.me. Any questions after the fact, anything I forgot, please email me and give me a few days to reply, because the next couple of weeks I travel quite a bit. We don't want to go into a lot of strategy stuff, but we still have to touch upon it, and I'll do that relatively quickly. You all get the slides. I will upload them today, so as soon as the organizer gets them to you, you will have them. But keep in mind, I think for a successful campaign, for a successful digital marketing activity, you want to always start by defining your purpose. With your purpose comes your core messages and your goals. That's the starting point. Once you have that, you define your strategy or strategies. Keep in mind, strategy is nothing more than direction. Anybody can participate in creating strategies. It's not a boardroom thing only. It's not a CMO, C-level guy only, or girl for that matter. Anybody and everybody can participate, because it's just about outlining direction. Once you have your direction in place, that's when you start looking at the tactics, and that's not what's happening today. In most businesses, in digital marketing, we start out here. Somebody is on Facebook, somebody did something on Pinterest, somebody did something on YouTube, somebody is now on Twitter, let's do that too. But it fails most of the time because there's no plan. There's no time limit for when we have to produce results to show to the boss people. So try to avoid that, just going directly on tactics and directly on specific channels just because it's hot. Because most of the time what's hot in that way turns out to be a fad. Maybe not a fad for usage, but a fad in terms of getting return on marketing investment. Once you're in the execution mode, that's great. Pay attention. Go deep, deep, deep. Those of you who are boss people, today you think you don't have to go deep, that you don't have to dive in because you have people to do that. Guess what? Not in digital marketing in India. The market here is simply not mature enough. I know because I've been through this whole rubble myself. I know how many mistakes we made, even if we thought we were doing the right thing 20 years ago when we first started out. So it's good to have that attitude. I better go in and check myself, right, as a manager person or a person responsible for teams. Because there's so many mistakes possible in digital. Why? Because we are juggling so many elements, right? But whatever you do, make sure you measure. Here's what I say. Whether you're working with an agency or not, sit down, a group of people, once a week for 1 hour, look at your numbers. And don't do this, yeah, what a success. Ooh, because it gives you no additional value other than pleasure at the moment. Would you agree? Would you want to understand this? Why did we succeed and how can we do more of that? And if you failed or if you didn't make the numbers that you were looking for, understand why. And how can we avoid that in the future? This is very commonsensical, I realize, but would you believe me? Some 97% of all businesses do not sit down frequently and look at their numbers. If I asked each, I'm not going to do it, I don't want to embarrass anybody, but if I asked each of you what was the number of unique visitors you had to your e-commerce site or your website or your blog, and what is your bounce rate, and a few very basic questions like that, you wouldn't know. A real digital marketer knows. You call him at 3 a.m. in the morning, and he'll be able to answer, or she would be able to answer those questions, right? But it takes time. It takes time to sort of get into this space, because it's completely different from where we came from in terms of traditional mass marketing. When I do assessments for retailers, or for others for that matter, I divide the areas that we look at for digital into two main areas. One is your ecosystem. That would be your website, your e-commerce portal, your YouTube channel if you have such a thing, etc. And then we have the actual communication bits, which is your engage, convince, convert, repeat. If you get the slide, but you'll see down here we have, for example, social media as part of that, your overall digital marketing is part of that, whereas up here you have your mobility as part of your ecosystem. Some of you would say, but mobility or mobile marketing, if you want to call it that, that should be part of this. It's also part of this, but it's definitely also part of your ecosystem. You're following me? We'll get a little bit more deeper into mobile, but I think every person in the room knows that mobile is only going one place, and that's up, right? Tier 1, Tier 2, Tier 3, doesn't matter, we can't help it. Some have feature phones now, that's going to switch, we don't know when, but eventually it's going to be a smartphone-ish kind of approach with a cheaper data plan. Not just a Facebook-funded one, but one that allows people to surf wherever they want with their data. So I do not have time to go into all of the specifics here, but I do advise you to take a look at this. If you want to know more about assessment and how we work with assessment and how you could do it yourself, just contact me and I'll give you some tools for that. Because the problem today is that consumers are difficult. Everybody is difficult. Getting anybody's attention and keeping their attention is extremely difficult. Look at this one. I mean, I'd say you have to be pretty darn good to even qualify to sit at that table. Would you agree? It's not like having lunch at the Leela. You know, this is the white freaking house. But only one guy is paying attention, and thankfully it's the right guy, right? I mean, what would the world be like if he was busy on Facebook, you know, liking his mother's last post or whatnot? So it's really an issue because human behavior is so freaking irrational. Like your phone beeped a moment ago and you were thinking, what was that? What was that? Could it be her? Could I go to the men's room now or could I just take a peek? You know, but let's be real. We are all like that, aren't we? That thing. I mean, the phone, not something else. That thing is really controlling our lives more and more. And it's another story, but it's a challenge for marketers. The other challenge is the attention span. It's now official that a goldfish, that's this one, has an attention span that is longer than the attention span of a human being. This mofo has an attention span of 9 seconds. We have an attention span 8.2 seconds or 8.4. Isn't that pathetic? So when you think about your digital ecosystem, you think about your design process, think about this, that when somebody comes to your site and they're not what we call a dedicated surfer, right? They don't know exactly what they're looking for, but they think they might have found the place they need to be. They give you 8.2 seconds to convince them to stay, right? That's pretty serious stuff. If you look at your web analytics, you will know this is true, right? Not as simple as I make it here because, like I said, if it's a dedicated surfer, they're going to stay longer. If they know your brand, they're going to stay longer. We'll get back to that as well. So what this means for us is, it's not a problem in India, I realize that, but keep in mind I'm from Denmark, very liberal country. No more sex on the first date. If that happened, if that was a law in Denmark, there would be a revolution, believe me. But not here in India, thankfully. We have style in India. So, but still, what this means is people want the dating process. Just because you put your message in front of them doesn't mean that they're going to react right now. A few will, but less and less. What people want is time to do their research and to prepare themselves for the purchase. On a global average, we say that people interact with 11 pieces of content before making a purchase decision. Now, that's not true if you're buying milk or sugar or rice or vegetables on a daily basis. But if you're buying something of more significant value, let's say clothing, obviously jewelry, obviously a car, then people want a lot of information. And as brands, we have to be willing to give that information. So how do you do that? Well, you increase what we call OTS. Those of you who have been in media or are in media, you know that OTS is opportunity to see. And I would say this is probably the most significant change in marketing, whether digital or otherwise, in recent times. That we have to increase OTS by a multiple of whatever, depending on the industry that you're in. If it's automotive, I would say OTS probably has to be in the 30 to 40 reach just to engage. If it's other categories, it might be 10 to 15. If you want to know more about this, I'll give you some links in the follow-up slides, but check out Google, Zero Moment of Truth, and the following research that they have done. I think they have it for India as well with numbers, but you want to check that. That validates what we're just talking about. So here's some things to consider in terms of OTS, because you don't want to be wasting media money, whether online or offline, just to reach people that many more times, do you? You want to leverage a smarter way. So build a strong database. You're already doing that. If you have retail stores, you probably have your people signing people up for a club, right? Sometimes just with the phone number, other times where people actually fill in a form with address and a lot of other nice information like an email address. You want to build that up and you want to treat it properly, because that enables you to control how you reach people and you know exactly whom you reach. Think about where you seed first. A lot of brands right now all over the world are seeding in paid media as a matter of course, right? We do a campaign, so we start paying media. And the way we pay media in India is like pathetic, because we pay for impressions, not for results. Elsewhere in the world, people are only paying for results. Not yet in India, by the way, not in Bangladesh, not in Pakistan, not in the Philippines, etc., etc. But it's going to change. you guys have the buying power. You should actually talk to your media guys and say, how can we do some performance-based stuff with you guys? Maybe they'll say no today, but maybe not 6 months later. So what I recommend, especially if it's a new campaign in digital, is you start by seeding in earned media or owned media. In other words, where it doesn't cost you media money to seed your message. Here's why. If you have a strong community and you ask them what they think, they're likely going to provide you feedback. So it allows you, if you have a 1 week, 2 week preceding campaign, it allows you to sort of adjust your messaging. It allows you to understand how strong is this offer, etc., etc. It seems to be a very good strategy, especially because Facebook is so popular in India, and with Facebook we can actually limit our audience very specifically. Now, we don't know if we can trust the information. We probably can't. I mean, the interest and so on. But likely, where they live, which school they went to and stuff like that, gender, we can trust that. Are you following me? So we take a subset of our segment and test with them in earned and owned media, for example. If you believe in no sex on the first date, you want to think about how do you build up the campaign. Today, the campaigns, they come out of nowhere, they smash you in the face, they run for 2 weeks, 4 weeks, and then they're gone. Is that right? More or less in India as well? And if we believe what I just mentioned about no sex on the first date, 11 pieces of content, we have to find a different way of building up. I think we need more entertainment at the beginning without too much selling, although I'm a big believer in selling, don't get me wrong. I think that's why we're in business. I'm not a PR guy, you know. In fact, I'm nobody's guy. I'm just my own guy, and I do whatever, and I advise whatever I think can bring money eventually. Maybe not today, but then maybe tomorrow or a year from now. So think about how do you build that up. There's been some great campaigns in India recently that were very good at building up. Time sensitive performs better, you know that, and in digital, it's very effective to use time sensitive campaigns, but then stay true to it. If an offer is run out at a given date, at a given time, don't prolong it for anybody, not even Mr. Modi or his wife. Doesn't matter. Because it's strength, isn't it? It's strength to say no, and it educates your audience to be on time, if you will, next time around. We'll get into the touch points as well. So let me try to summarize this part with some new models that I created that are also very commonsensical. This is our old Aida, right? Those of you who studied marketing, you know her. Still smoking her Havana cigars, as she were. Attention, interest, desire, action. That model doesn't work very well anymore. We need a new one. That's her. Her name happens to be Idea. So what we've done here is we've taken the desire part and said we need a step before we can get to the action. No sex on the first date, right? Which is engagement. So the big question for all brands, whether in retail or elsewhere right now, is what are we going to do? How are we going to engage people over a longer period of time? Because what happens is people eyeball your message, right? They come into your funnel. Are you following me over here? They come in this way, most people. And then today, because of confusion, because of a longer buying process, people stay here for a long time, potentially, before they actually are ready to give a purchase. So if I was in fashion, I would really think hard. What am I going to do? So I recently gave a masterclass in Germany where Hugo Boss and other big brands in Germany were there, and I was shocked to learn that they aren't following this. Although Hugo Boss, I don't like the brand, doesn't matter, it's a big investment for a lot of people, right? It's like what, $1,000 for a suit? Yeah, so let's say 800 to 1,000, right? And to the kind of people who buy Hugo Boss in my country, according to my wife who's in that industry, it's a big investment. It's not like us because we use the suit every day for work. These people use it for 2 parties a year, that kind of thing. The rest of the time they don't have clothes on or they do something else. Oh yeah, you like that, huh? I'm learning as we go along. So our job now is to figure out, think about that canvas, figure out what are we going to do? What's going to make us sexy enough for people to say, yeah, let's have a conversation over a longer period of time because I'm not ready to buy right now. What's going to allow us to do that and then still not sway away from the main purpose, which is to get you to buy? So it can't just be all fun and bananas over here, not talking about your brand, not talking about your product. It still has to be you. It still has to be relevant to connect to the eventual purchase. Are you following me? I'll show you an example later on. We also call this nudging. Let me tell you about nudging so that you get this maybe not in context, but so you understand what I'm saying. This is a picture taken at Schiphol Airport, which is the airport in Amsterdam, in the Netherlands. They had a problem there. The problem was in the men's toilet. The problem specifically was that men apparently couldn't hit where they were supposed to hit. As a result, cleaning costs went up. And you know, an airport is run by numbers crunchers, right? So they're like, why is the cleaning cost so high? Well, it turns out the men can't hit where they're supposed to fix it. So a committee sat down and said, how can we fix it? And here's what they came up with. They figured out if we paint a flea or a fly, whichever it is in English, right here, then a man, he's not just going to come in like this. He's going to go like very, very motivated. Oh, I'm going to get you. I'm going to get you, right? And that's exactly what happened. Now men could hit where they were supposed to hit. And as a result, cleaning problem was no longer there. Number crunchers were happy because there was less cleaning. And this is a true story. I'm not making this up. There are academic papers, studies on this. Isn't that amazing? I think it's like, had I known that when I was 19, I would have pretty much owned the world right now, including Walmart and Amazon and everybody else. Because that knowledge, I mean, of sort of hinting people, nudging people, like, you know, you want to go this way, right? You know what I'm talking about. You do. Yeah, you're very professional. I see that immediately. So think about how can you develop a program that nudges people. It's not about shouting and screaming at them, come and buy now and 20% off if you come today. It's about having that conversation, right? And inspiring them. And putting a seed in their mind, and what I call the mind box that says, if I'm going to buy that product, there's only one place in the world I'm going to buy it. And that's going to be an XYZ brand's shop, right? Okay, let me ask you a question now. You've been awfully quiet, and I seem to be doing all of the talking, which is unfair, I think. But we have limited time. Let me ask you a question. Think about it before you answer. How do most people make buying decisions? Do they do that through logic or with emotions? Who think with logic? Okay, thank you. Who thinks with emotions? Okay, who's not old enough to vote? A few. Okay, you're of course right. We didn't get 100%, unfortunately, and I'll tell you something. It only happened to me once. I don't know how many of these things I've done. Maybe 300. I don't know. It happened to me once, and it was last week in Topeka. Do you know where that is? That's the capital of Kansas State. 100% of the audience said with emotions. All other places we have to argue with the people who say with logic. 90% of you know that it with emotions. The rest of us keep that in mind. No buying decision happens without some sort of emotion having been stirred. Logic is used to rationalize the purchase. So think about your last Mercedes-Benz purchase, right? It didn't make sense. So you took the brochure, which you had never read before the purchase, and you said, why did I buy this car? Ah, okay. And you tell the missus, now listen now. These are the reasons we bought that car instead of a Tata Nano or something else, right? So keep that in mind, but it's still important that when people rationalize the purchase that they come up with some reasonable logic for the purchase, because that makes them even more happy, doesn't it? And that affects your brand. So our life really is, if we believe that it's about connecting emotionally with our customers and potential customers, we have to understand the life of a consumer. And for digital, that's very important. We'll get back to that later, why it's so important. But let me give you a few hints right now about what you can be looking for. First of all, their lifestyle. What kind of a person are they? You may want to invent your own personas to describe different types of audience. I'm not a persona fan, but I do acknowledge it's a good tool, right? And it's relatively easy to get started with personas. What are their interests and aspirations? relate that to your own brand, but look at other stuff as well. Because you're going to need that other stuff potentially in your content plan. Are you following me? So if somebody is interested in cricket, which is just about every man and most women in India, so it might be stupid, but if they're interested in a specific cricket club, let's say, then it's good to know because you can leverage that somehow in your communication and in your content. What is their community affiliation? Many of you here, I see, and that's good, you have very clear community affiliations. There are people you will spend time with, and there are people you will not spend time with. Is that right? Doesn't mean you're stupid, or dumb, or arrogant. That's just a fact of life. We all want to mingle with people like ourselves. I don't think that will ever change no matter how socialist anyone becomes, right? That's how we are like humans. So think about that community affiliation because you'll use that for 2 or 3 different things, one of which is to figure out where people spend time, right? Are they spending time at the yacht club? Is that where you can find them? Are they spending time at the, polo? Is there a polo club as well? Golf club, at the beach, whatever it may be. What about their location? What's the scenario there? This is really important for mobility. We'll get back to that. Where do they spend their time when they interact digitally? Now, I'm guessing now that everybody in the room spends time at home, at the office, and occasionally when you go back to your province, if your province is not where you live, right? Because you're probably wired 24/7. So, but a lot of people are not like you, right? So there are places where they spend time researching, maybe making purchases, and there are other places where they don't do it. And then the fulfillment preference. And I think at this point in time in India, that's very important. We can't just say, just because we have huge e-commerce successes like Amazon, Flipkart, that's the one. I was going to say FlipSnap, but it's, and Snapdeal. There are 3 very, very huge successes in terms of reach, not financially yet, but in terms of reach in India. And just because they're there doesn't mean that everybody wants to buy this way. And they have huge problems with payment mechanisms, as you all know as well, right? This payment on delivery thing without credit cards, I mean, that's a nightmare. That's worse than the dentist, I think. So don't take for granted that people have a certain preference just because it looks as if you and your friends do. Some people would like to buy online and pick up in the shop with an option to, what do you call that in English, regret? Cancel the purchase because it wasn't exactly what they wanted, right? So there's I forgot who it is right now, pardon? Yeah, to avoid, yeah. So once you see that, okay, it wasn't exactly the color that I thought it was, then you can just avoid it, even if you had your card as a guarantee. There's a US retailer, I'll get you the name in the follow-up material, I can't remember it right now, that's very successful with this model, where the majority of e-commerce purchases are actually not fulfilled the traditional logistic way, but in shop. The great thing about that, as you all know, is creates more traction inside the shop. I go to pick up one thing and I end up coming, not me, my wife. She ends up coming up with 7 other things. Good for the shop, not good for our family. But let's not go into this. I think this morning you've heard, those of you who attended, you heard a lot about multi-channel, omni-channel, touch point, and so on. I just want to say that should be the goal, right? That we provide a uniform experience across all these touch points. A good starting point I've learned through consulting is just to count all the touch points, because that's going to give almost everybody a huge surprise. Because you typically count touch points on like one hand, max 2, but when you actually count them up, sometimes you have several hundreds of touch points. And that's a huge challenge for marketers as well as other departments to manage all of that, right? What you could do, however, is look at digital and then look at your offline presence. And just in these 3 areas, ask yourself, how can I improve the purchase experience? Let's say showing products. Will 3D, 3-dimensional showing of products, is that going to aid my sale or not? Right? Is better pictures of my product going to aid my sale? Is using what's his name? The guy who can't dance. Khan something? The Bollywood guy? Yeah, he can't dance, but he's big. So using him as an act, not as an actor, as a model for the clothes, would that aid sale? Are you following me? Look at all aspects of the purchase experience, but remember not to do it because it's smart. Do it because it's going to help you sell more products. The same for the pre-purchase and the post-purchase. And the post-purchase, in my opinion, if it's about expanding what we call the share of wallet, is extremely important. One of the things Amazon did so well 10, 15 years ago is that they taught their audience there was an experience in the box. I remember myself, much younger, running to the post office, as I had to do back then, to pick up the Amazon book package, because I knew there would be some coupons for me inside, right? And sometimes a launch of something that they said I was one of few selected people who, you know, I was like, of course I am. That's right, I'm bad. I get all the exclusive offers. This stuff works. Give people an experience after the purchase is in particular relevant and powerful when you do it from digital channels like e-commerce sales. So what about all of the footfall? So in this country, in my experience, there's so much focus on footfall. It doesn't matter what kind of people. As long as we have footfall, we're happy. That's sometimes a problem. Like I said, I've shopped here many times, and it can be a problem. You have to wait for half an hour to get help, and then you have to stand in line for 2 hours, which I, of course, would never do. But some people do this. Maybe 2 is exaggerated. Let's say 1 hour, right? So I think there's something we can look at that is coming in the near future, or maybe sooner than we think, that can help you increase share of wallet, aid retention, but also add word of mouth if you are a first mover. Look at your products in store, even those you don't have in store that you could digitally display when it's sold out or have not yet arrived. Look at that canvas and then ask yourself, today I have this pretty lame experience of a shoe on a shelf, right? And I rely entirely on the salespeople's ability to tell a customer about the quality of that shoe, which sometimes they just don't know. But because we're in India, they don't say that, do they? They don't say, I don't know if it's leather or artificial leather. When you ask, is it leather? They say yes. No, they say yes. You know, so and that's not a problem because sorry. That's not a problem because maybe you get the sale. The problem is after the fact when you find out, because I did that, because I'm an idiot, right? So you find out that those shoes, they smell funny, so you're not happy with the purchase that you did. So ask yourself, what kind of mechanism could we potentially, in lack of a better word, install in the shop that will help the consumer to make a purchase decision and be happy about it? That could also help consumers who do not wish to purchase at that point in time, for whatever reason, that they want to purchase online. You could have some mechanisms that would remind them later. Are you following me? Click remind later. If there's a card, they swipe the card or whatever. But what I think is more interesting, where this is relevant, supermarkets, groceries of all kinds, butchers, bakeries, whatever, are these kinds of gesture recognition displays. Have you seen these ever? So this has been tested in Germany, and it seems to work really well, although it's a bit of an odd experience for the consumer, because the consumer would come to the shelf. In this case, you see there are steaks there, and then they would have to make a gesture like that without necessarily touching anything. So that seems a bit odd the first time you do it, but when they see that what is returned, this is in German, and it says where it was produced, aus Deutschland, so it's from Germany, but the original is from the Netherlands, Holland, etc., etc. You get the point, right? You get all of the information, and for health-conscious consumers, like my wife, and many of you all's wives, this is extremely important, right? And it's a more convenient way for them to get the information that they want before making a purchase decision about, you know, the calories and whatever else that is that they're looking for. Try to look into this. Like I said, if you're a first mover, I think it could have tremendous impact on your image as well as eventually on your in-store sales. I wanted to mention this before we move to the next section. We'll have a break in about 10 minutes. I'm trying to provoke you a little bit here. First of all, if you look at your marketing budget for 2016, have you already put aside 5 to 10% of your budget for training staff and upgrading their skills? Based on my experience in this country and other countries, it is so underutilized that we have to continuously update the skills of our people. And I don't mean by sending them to conferences. That inspires them. That's also important. But actually getting the specific skills that they need is a very good investment, because it will really enable them to get much more value for the buck, if you will, for whatever other investments you're doing. But it turns out in India, a lot of people have to actually pay these courses themselves, and maybe can't even get a free day off, right? In many businesses, it is like that. I think you should add, it's a smart decision if you add more for skills updating and training of your staff. 15% for experimentation, I'll get back to that. And then look at your touch point interactions. I think you need some budget to improve the interactions wherever they happen. You may not think of this as marketing today, but I think anything that touches the customer is marketing, because it has an impact. Doesn't matter where it is. How about customer service? Who owns customer service? Two different silos, right? Who don't necessarily talk because they might have IT in the middle. And how do you get around IT? Especially in a large organization. That's very, very difficult. So I say marketing needs to own customer service because of digital, because of social, because of how the conversations are happening. Show you some examples a little bit later. So think about how are you going to address these things as well in your marketing budget. Today's marketing, traditional marketing budgets, they're built up around a lot of media, a lot of assets, right? And then a little bit for eventualities or miscellaneous, as you might call it. That's it. I think we need to get these components into the marketing budget in 2016. Think about experimentation and all of the new stuff that's going to be happening in 2016. Facebook commerce, or whatever they choose to call it tomorrow, right? Instagram e-commerce is now possible. YouTube even. In India, you can rent and buy movies on YouTube. It's so smart. You search for a pirate Bollywood movie, you don't get the search result. Instead, you get, would you like to see a preview or would you like to purchase the full movie? Did I do the accent good? Because I'll be using it in Europe, you see, later this week. Okay, I still have to practice. I can do this, though. Yes. Okay, this requires experimentation. No one knows exactly how to do this right now anywhere in the world. Everybody has to do it by trial and error. You need to be conscious about that, right? It's not just a matter of launching a new channel or a new initiative. It's a matter of understanding it fully and being able to allocate all the time necessary to make it a success. That requires experimentation. Time is essential, as well as a little bit of money. Twitter, anybody heard about Twitter's e-commerce component? You purchase directly from Twitter. I know Twitter is not hugely popular in India at this point in time, but this, in terms of return on marketing investment, this is proven right now, proving to be very, very efficient. I know there's an audience issue in India. There is in my country as well. Maybe that's going to change anyway. Have an eye out for this. Let me ask you another question. The question is the following, and then I'll ask you after to raise your hand. Which reads the most words per minute? Do you think it's the eye or the ear? Who think it's the eye? Okay, thank you. Who think it's the ear? We have a tie, we have a tie, we have a tie. Oh my goodness. I won't tell anybody that on Twitter. I'll tell them the other thing, but not this one. No. It'll stay between us. To those of you who guessed it right, you'll be happy to know that the eye is 20 times faster than the ear. Why am I telling you this? Not because Aristotle says the soul never thinks without a picture. That was a good one. I'll steal that one, if I may. That was a good one. Very good. Humor is great, isn't it? Yeah, and it's also a creative process somehow. Look at this visual. This, of course, is an outdoor campaign, but I think we get it in a heartbeat, right? there's an emotional connection. We think about something. It's going to be a little bit bad because we're thinking about the homeless, and then we're going to think about how can we help homeless people. This one, of course, has humor in it. Well, you have snow in India, just not in Mumbai. But this would be hugely funny in Denmark or Sweden or Norway or Russia or places like that where there's a lot of snow, right? Because anyways, you didn't get it. Using humor, and sometimes you have to push the button a little bit, right? As we're doing here. I'm not sure if that would work in India. People would just get embarrassed, I think. Like, do I really have to touch it? But here's another example from our good friends in Pakistan. They have what I think is the world's best picture editorial. They happen to be a client of mine. It's the biggest tea brand in Pakistan. It's very good tea. I know they're Pakistanis, but they're still good. And this is what it looks like. Notice how they don't forget what this is about. It's about, in this case, the Danadar tea, which is a more expensive, etc., tea. It's not just a story. The brand is there all the time. And I think that's what's important. But we have to ask ourselves, how do we create something that people will get while staying true to our message and our purpose and our brand? Because a lot of the successful social media stuff is just funny, etc., but there's no clear path to the brand and what this is all about. This one, I think, is very convincing. Shoe repair, I will heal you, I will save your soul, I will even die for you. I mean, you have to go and visit the guy, even if there's nothing wrong with your shoes or anything else, just to see what kind of character it is. So what I'm saying is that the value proposition that you have when you create your picture editorial needs to be aligned with your brand messaging as well. So here's how you can do it. Decide and create your unique pictorial style. For those of you who are boss people, you've got to allow a budget for this, because otherwise what people are going to do is search the internet, use somebody else's picture. Luckily, you're not in the US, but if you were in the US, you'd have a lawsuit coming up very soon because you were using somebody else's picture, somebody else's audio, somebody else's video. You've got to allocate funds for this. Make sure it can work on all channels, because otherwise it's becoming too expensive. Would you agree? If you're producing something over here for Pinterest and something over here for Facebook and something over here for let's say that there's a women's magazine here. I'm sure there are many. So see if you can somehow find a synergy so that you have to start with the same original and then you make versions of that for different channels. How do you manage this process? I think is something I would sit down with the people. The boss person should sit down with the people who are actually doing this and look at their processes and help them get the processes right. Because you can waste a lot of time if you don't have a lean process for this kind of stuff. And when we look at digital today, this is happening all the time. It's not like you do it once and then you repeat 2 years later. I see some of you are nodding, probably because you are doing this on a daily basis, right? So you know there's something to do all the time. For that reason, it's extremely important to have a lean process for this. I know it sounds boring to some of you, but believe you me, the devil really is in the detail in digital marketing. It's not a matter of just picking 5 media outlets, do one great ad, shoot, reap the rewards. Digital is much more complicated than that. When we talk about this, I think I should also mention tone of voice. That's the really difficult part in digital. Think about your social media presence today. Probably you're only speaking in one tone of voice, right? So you're trying to attract teenagers with the way of your communication as well as potentially grandmothers. That's probably not playing out really well, because I don't think the teens are going to fall all over you when you speak as you would to her grandma, right? Look at an example from a huge brand that we all know who really gets this. Here we have a tweet. Rich Boy Rod says, "Getting Domino's for my bitch." And Domino's, they reply, "That bitch will enjoy every bite." So for those of you who are not in the know, there seems to be a trend for the last 15 years that in the, what is the politically correct way of saying it, in the black community, African American community, that the guys would call their girlfriend or wife a bitch, whereas the white people would, bitch would be a very, very bad word to say to anybody, right? So that's the context. So getting your tone of voice right is really, really important. Almost everything in digital is content driven, right? With the written word, images, and video. That's the arsenal you have to use regardless of the channel. Would you agree with that? So for that reason, those three things, you really have to find a way to get the most out of them. And when we talk about tone of voice, I don't believe that the right approach any longer is to have one Facebook page for a nationwide brand that appeals to many different, across many different demographics. I think it's more a matter of looking at the lifestyles. Are you following me? As an easy workaround. So the teens have a certain lifestyle, certain interests, so you create a community that is run by your brand, right? Whether it's on Facebook or somewhere else. And then you sort of replicate that, but with different messaging and a different tone of voice for different types of demographics. It sounds like a lot more work, but likely it's gonna work. It's gonna produce results, because I think the one-size-fits-all approach that we're doing today is not really producing the results it's supposed to. So I have been asked that we have a break now at exactly, had to look again, 3:14. But I have also been told that if you don't come back, 3:25 Indian Standard Time, they will close the doors and lock them so you don't come back in. But maybe that's an advantage for you. I don't know. You decide. So please come back in 10 minutes and have a great break.